Murder attempt survivors of Reddit. How did you survive? Was there a point that you accepted that you were going to die? So, an ex beat me nearly to death and stabbed me twice. I remember the point where I let myself pass out because I thought I wasn't going to survive. It was the coldest day that year in the province, and the middle of the night. A jogger found me in the middle of the park, blood everywhere. He thought I was dead at first. 3 days in a coma, hypothermia, a list of injuries that are so horrific I don't like thinking about it. If he hadn't had insomnia and went running at 3 a.m., I would have died. The jogger ended up being a big part of my life. I see him for a nice dinner twice a year. My parents paid off his student loans. I regularly send gifts to the trauma team that took care of me. Next story. My dad's girlfriend always hated me. She would constantly talk about putting me in foster care and would treat me very differently to how she treated her own kids. This happened when I was around 5 or 6. I woke up one night incredibly overheated and finding it really difficult to breathe. I was choking up on the majority of my quite long and thick hair and had been covered up in several layers of thick blankets. My body, not my favorite, but I looked up and I remember her just standing there in the semi-dark room, watching me struggle with no expression on her face. As I started to struggle a little more, I woke up her son, who was sleeping on the floor in the same room. Then suddenly, she changed and started to pull the hair out of my mouth and helped me to sit up. She got me a glass of water and told me I was lucky she came in because a ghost had shoved my hair down my throat and she was saving me. My dad took me to the doctor the next day for an asthma attack and I was given an inhaler for the next week. The effed up thing is, because I was so young, I didn't really put together what happened until I was much older. She never tried again, but she was horribly abusive. I cut off all contact with her at around age 13 and with my father at 19. Some people are just pure effing evil. Next story. There was a kid in high school woodshop who thought it would be cool to see someone get effed up by the table saw. He would regularly wait for people to use it, then come up behind them with an air compressor hose and blast it in their ear or on the back of their head while the saw was being used. Obviously, everyone flinches. Plenty of people would duck away from it and almost hit the blade with their face, or flinch and almost run their hand or arm through the saw. We had told the teacher a few times, but he never believed anyone was that malicious. This went on for a few weeks. Eventually, he stopped using the air compressor and just started pushing people, and then I was that person. The kid waited outside of the room until I turned it on and started running a large piece of plywood through the table saw, then came over and pushed my head down. My face actually got close enough to the blade that it scraped my goggles. The blade wasn't set high enough that I would have died. I would have lost my eye, and had some pretty awful damage though. But I don't really remember getting that close to the table. It happened so fast that by the time I figured out what was going on, it was over. The teacher saw it, I guess, and the kid was removed from the class, but that was it. Edit. Jesus Christ. Yes, I hit him. Yes, it was with a 2x4. I stepped back and picked one up that was laid across the long side of the saw, and I hit him once across the back and knocked him to the ground, and it also knocked the wind out of him. I just didn't think it was critical for the attempted murder part. Edit 2. This was like 8 to 9 years ago. I heard he is in jail now for trying to kill his girlfriend or something. I don't know. I haven't really cared enough to follow up. So, I think we can all agree that everything here tracks, right? Like, is anybody surprised by the end result that he's in jail for wanting to kill his girlfriend? I'm certainly not. And I'm glad he got a 2x4. Hacksaw Jim Duggan would be proud of this man. Anyway, next story. So, my ex-boyfriend suffocated me until the point that I passed out and almost succeeded in killing me. He had gotten angry at me during an argument, and when I tried to call the police because he was getting violent, he took my phone from me and forced my head face down into a pillow, screaming that he would kill me before he would let himself get arrested. Somewhere about 3 to 4 minutes in, I started to lose consciousness, and I thought I was going to die. After 3 hours of him holding me captive, I managed to convince him to let me use my computer, since you can't dial 911 from a PC, and managed to Facebook message a friend who called the police for me. Edit. Ex-boyfriend did not go to jail or face any punishment for this. Despite the ex already having a DV charge on his record, the police showed up and told me that they couldn't do anything since there were no visible marks. My ex is a free man, assuming he can avoid getting a 3rd DUI this year. Next story. A drug dealer attacked me with a crowbar in his house because I objected to him throwing his cat off the wall. He jumped on me, bit me, then ran out of the room. He returned moments later with a crowbar. I ran out of the house with no shoes, didn't have time to put them back on, and I ran down the street. It's about a mile long, no houses. It runs in the middle of a field with an old monastery on it, and he gave chase with an effing knife. I was so unfit at the time, it was horrific. No one would stop their cars and help, understandably. I ran into the field to try and hide because I couldn't run anymore. I was stumbling down a little ankle-deep stream with no shoes on. I couldn't breathe, and all I could hear was him closing in on me. The sound of the stream, my own breath, and closing footsteps behind me in the middle of nowhere. I thought if I don't get back up on that road now, I am going to die here. And I turned and made a run for the road. I got there and kept running. I couldn't breathe. It was just adrenaline. I then ended up bursting through the door of a rough-as-F little awful pub. The barmaid let me use the phone. I'd left my mobile at my dealer's house, and everyone in the bar thought it was hilarious. The dealer burst in after me and told everyone I had just smoked weed for the first time ever and was freaking out, and that he would take me home and make sure I was okay. Some people realized what was really happening at this point and told him to F off. My dad came and picked me up, and this was the start of me turning my life around. This happened 11 years ago. Edit. This happened in the UK and it was dark, just after Christmas 2007. Next story. I'll keep it short. Hanging out at my favorite bar at around age 19, saw an old friend's band play. I was hanging with another friend, Kevin, earlier. Kev is a big, burly hockey player, so I hadn't been hit on by other dudes all night. But Kev had to leave to work the next day, so I was all alone near the night's end. Waiting for my tab alone at the end of the bar, an old man in a weird hat comes up to me. I'd seen him staring before during the show, and he says, "Hey, sweetie, your boyfriend in the band?" And then I come up with a great lie and I say, yeah, totally. I'm dating the drummer. Why? "Well, I'm gonna go fight him for you." And he kept on with that train of thought. It took a little convincing to get the guy to not fight my not boyfriend. After a minute, he gets extremely irate, growls and stomps straight out of the bar. Weird, right? Well, it turns out he'd roofied my drink an hour prior when I was hanging with Kevin, but Kevin and I swapped beers somehow. Well, Kevin nearly crashed his car on the way home, had to be driven the rest of the way as he got woozy, threw up in his yard before passing out in his own vomit, and his roommates had to carry him in and shower him before bed. He was unconscious but alive for the next 16 hours, through 8 hours of his alarm clock beeping and throughout his whole work shift that he had missed. He'd just had that one beer. The man was checking to see if the drugs kicked in and realized he had wasted them when I was still alert enough to argue. If I, at 120 pounds, had gotten that beer instead of 260-pound Kevin, I know I would have been a pretty corpse that night. So, yes, we have our longtime viewers and our more informed viewers, but for those of you who don't know, your narrator here, who is not AI, I swear to God, is named Kevin. And yes, I drank that beer and I felt horrible. I was 12 years old at the time. I don't know why they let me into the bar, but man, I missed my shift and I got in trouble. But anyway, I'm feeling better now. Next story. So, it could be it doesn't actually match here. I don't know if she was trying to kill me or just make me sick or uncomfortable, but my father's ex-girlfriend tried to make me take her medication without me knowing. She had kidney problems and was waiting for a transplant and had to go 3 times a week to dialysis. So she was on a lot of pills and things, was going to a psychiatrist too, and there was a lot of food and drinks that she couldn't take, like Coca-Cola. For her, any kind of soda was a 1 glass a month kind of thing unless she wanted a trip in an ambulance. And I always have been a huge soda fan. At that time, I had a glass with lunch and another one with dinner. We always had extra bottles, it was cheaper, and I was the only one who drank them at my home. So one day, I go to take a sip and surprise, there's no soda in the fridge. I go for one of the extra bottles, and there's none. That's the first signal something was wrong because my father was very adamant that the pantry had to always be full. I check again the fridge and there was a bottle, one of those 0.75 liter or so, something we'd never ever bought. My father's girlfriend was already a B-word at the time, acted with me as if I was 3 instead of 19, had managed to upset my sister so much she was living somewhere else, and I had the impression she was trying to do the same with me, trying to fight with me for little things because she knew my father would always take her side. So when I saw that bottle, I decided I wouldn't touch it. No way, Jose. 2 weeks go by and the bottle is still there, untouched. And even the soda I had bought myself just disappeared into thin air a day after. Finally, my dad asks about the small bottle, saying if it had gone bad or something, or if he could take it. He said all of this while looking at me because, again, I was the soda drinker and the girlfriend couldn't have almost any because of her kidney. And then that bloody B-word herself, all worried, goes, "Oh, no, you can't drink it. I put my medicine in it so it's easier to take without feeling its taste. Don't touch it." And I swear, I felt how I went pale. This woman was on a crap ton of things, serious things. Anyone could have taken that bottle. And I know my father didn't buy her story, but he just smiled, nodded, and said he would buy me soda the next day because he had noticed that there wasn't any left. So, just to be clear, she couldn't drink soda. Her medicine was with strict dosage because it wasn't just some ibuprofen or something. And we are talking about somebody who painted her whole water bottle black with messages like, "Don't drink, poison, my property," just so she could track properly how much water she took every day. And this woman decided to take her medicine with soda, not telling anyone, in a non-marked bottle. At the same time, all the rest of the soda disappeared. All of it made me start to think and put some things together. Like the way I always felt sick after she'd make dinner and the way she would put all the food in a central plate except for mine. Something that at first I took as a favor to me because I preferred it that way. But after that day though, I refused to eat anything she cooked for me and wasn't with everyone else's food. And surprisingly, or not, I stopped getting sick at night. So maybe she didn't mean to kill me, but she was trying something for sure. Next story. At the end of an 8-month program in a film school, one of my best friends and me decided to do acid the last night to celebrate, but my friend insisted on doing 4 stamps each, and he paid for everything. We had done a fair amount before this together, so it was not totally abnormal, but still a bit much. 3 hours into it, he starts to block all of the exits, and I realize he is acting manic. But I'm on an F-load of acid too, and seem to be drifting in and out of consciousness as this guy starts to talk about the view from his 18th floor, and takes me to the window. I zone in when I'm almost out of the window and realize he has been trying to convince me to jump and was now resorting to physical pressure. I panicked and was in total fear since I could see the crazy in this guy's eyes. I grabbed my things and rushed out of there in the acid haze. As far as whether I accepted death, nope. The moment I was lucid enough to understand what was happening, I got the F out. Next story. My father tried to murder me when I was outed as a lesbian when I was 15. My family is super Christian and they just watched as my father beat me. He put my head through a wall and said the most terrible things. I thought I was going to die, and I even welcomed it because I was so full of shame and self-hatred. I think my lack of panic enabled me to remember a random self-defense move to break his hold around my throat. To this day, I'm not sure how I got away. He was drunk though. I never reported it. No one would have been on my side. I ran away and didn't speak with any of them for 17 years. He's in jail now for killing a woman and her kid in a DUI. Next story. In college, I woke up to someone on top of me in my apartment. I lived alone. The guy had his pants off and a knife pointed directly to my head. The memories of that night aren't really clear. He threatened to kill me multiple times. I remember crying. All I know is that at one point, he pulled the knife back as to prepare to stab me. Instinct kicked in, and I grabbed it. I don't know if I scared him off because my hand was bleeding extremely bad, severed tendons and muscles on 3 out of 5 fingers, or what, but I didn't ever really accept that I was going to die. I knew it was an option, not one I was choosing though if I had any say in it. The guy ended up helping me get paper towels to wrap my hand, demanded money, and then left. Later found out he took his own life. He left a note saying that he did it because the girl fought back. All I have to say about that incident is that PTSD sucks. Big time. Next story. I got in a fight outside of a club in Charlotte, North Carolina one time. The guy went at my neck. I thought it was a punch, so I had to put my hand up to block it. He had a knife. I didn't know. I didn't feel anything at the time, but when he hit my hand, he took off running. I chased him for about 3 to 5 seconds before I realized my hand looked like I was wearing a red glove, covered in blood. Good thing is where he hit me was below my thumb in a fatty tissue area, so no serious damage at all. It just bled a lot. Nothing life-altering about it. Next story. In high school, my cousin and I were at the public school. We were swimming in the deep end and just chatting. We'd never really been close, and we used to hate each other in middle school, but we'd kinda made amends and I was trying to be friendly. He tells me to swim towards the deep end, and I do. I have never been a strong swimmer, though. He follows me and puts his hand on my shoulder. I thought he was just letting me know he wouldn't let me go under the water. Suddenly, he grabs me and puts me in a full Nelson and dunks me underwater. I wasn't expecting this, and I took in a lungful of water. He holds me there for a while and eventually brings me back up, lets me cough, and then puts me back under. He does this a few times, and every time he brings me up, I don't have time to cough out the water to breathe. I thought I was going to die. It was fairly late in the day, so there wasn't a lot of people around to witness this. Luckily, my sister happened to walk by and called out for me. My cousin lets me go, and I pathetically doggy paddle to the side. My sister sees that I'm having trouble breathing and pulls me out of the water. I looked back at my cousin, and he didn't even look mad or anything. He just looked at me and watched me leave. I still see him every now and then at family reunions and such. I've never talked to him since. Everyone in the family loves him, and the only person who knows what he tried to do to me is my sister. Next story. My mother tried pretty damn hard when she was alive. Worst thing was that was 4 of us in all, but I was the only one she hated because I looked like dad. Pills, pushing me out of a window, from a boat, leaving the house with everyone else at night with the front door open, and me alone. This was a very bad area. She tried constantly to kick me from home. This carried on from the age of 5 till I was 8, and she successfully managed to take her own life instead. Ended up going to dad, who she kicked out of the house years beforehand, and after some pretty heavy therapy, ended up pretty normal. Considering how my siblings turned out, I'm the lucky one. Gotta admit though, it never went in my head I might die. I just kind of accepted it, hoped for it in a way. No matter what she did, at night when she was crying alone in the front room, I was the only one who went to comfort her. Looking back, I'm glad I at least tried, but damn, I don't care what her problems were. I hate that woman to this day. My stepmother's my real mom, as far as I'm concerned. Next story. Nothing too crazy, but my ex chased me down wielding a knife at 3 a.m. down a ghetto-ass neighborhood. I wasn't too terrified because my survival instinct kicked in and booked it. I'm athletic. I was holding my 6-month-old at the time and calling the cops with the other hand. When I was in the apartment, I was pretty terrified, but I guess I just work well under that kind of pressure. After the cops came and stopped her before she could reach me down the street, I broke down into tears. I don't know why, it was just an explosion of emotions. My daughter was awoken by me grabbing her and running out shirtless and shoeless in the middle of the night. My baby mama and I have to talk at least once a week for phone calls. Weird to talk to my attempted murderer like that all casually. Next story. I was 14 and with a few friends. A, J, and M, when we decided to buy some marijuana from a kid a couple of years older than us that we knew from school, X. We went to his house, made the deal, and went over to J's house. Sometime later, about an hour or so, there was pounding on the door, and J looks through the peephole. Yo, it's X! I come to answer the door with J, and the second the lock was undone, the door flies open. Jay took the entire force of the door and got crushed between it and the wall. Several older guys rush in and I'm pulled out, slammed on the ground, and there's a hand around my throat. As the life is being choked out of me, I gather that the choker is X's older brother. X had something stolen from him and we are held responsible. Everything was happening so fast and the blood wasn't getting to my brain, so I can't recall everything clear. But I remember the last 10 seconds. Friend A was tending to J, who ended up with 5 broken ribs, a broken wrist, broken jaw, and a dislocated knee, while M ran and got J's father's hunting rifle. X's brother looks at M holding his gun in the doorway of the house and says, "You effing coward, you won't shoot. You'll just watch as I kill this kid." When he looked back down at me, I saw pure psychotic rage in his eyes. Then he screamed and fell off of me. Did M shoot? No, but he's beside me now, waving the gun, and everyone backed off, except for X's brother, who is screaming and holding face, and there's blood all over me and him. Then I noticed my hand is burning bad. Apparently, I grabbed my keys out of my pocket, and holding them in my fist like some kind of claw, I slammed them into his face. My hand hurts because the keys tore my hand up, but all the blood isn't mine. The entourage of X grabs the brother, and they retreat quickly, speeding off in their vehicles. Jay and I visit the hospital. He stays for 5 days as they treat his various injuries, and I escape with a small scar on my left index finger from a few stitches. X's brother was also there, and my family got his injury report directly from his mother. 3 lacerations and a broken cheek that required reconstructive surgery. Lost most vision in his right eye, perforated eardrum, 6 shattered teeth, and a cracked jaw. The key to my first car had a 6mm piece of the tip break off and lodge into his jawbone. This happened 18 years ago, was even at another person's house, and I still keep a weapon by the triple-locked, reinforced door for when I answer it. The sound of hard knocking can trigger anxiety attacks sometimes, but all in all, I escaped alive, and with a minor physical injury, but I still live with the trauma inflicted that day. Next story. When I was 9 years old, my mother's boyfriend at the time tried to suffocate me in a container of ice cream. He was a piece of crap that had already been beating my mom and me for a couple of years. She was working and I was told I could have 2 scoops after dinner. I took 3 scoops, because I was 9 and I liked ice cream. And when he noticed, he completely lost his damn mind, screaming and throwing things around. He grabbed the ice cream from the fridge, dragged me by the hair to the bathroom, and proceeded to scream at me about following the rules and "this is why you're such a fat ass," while holding me down in the ice cream tub until I eventually passed out. It was only a day or so after that when he decided to hang up on my father, who called to talk to me. This resulted in my father, my uncle, and 2 police officers showing up and me moving in with my father, who was only verbally abusive instead of physical and verbal. Next story. I was coming home from a girl's house who I was sort of seeing at the time. The way home was probably about an hour and a half, give or take, and involved taking 3 buses and a SkyTrain. I ended up leaving her house at about 10:30 to 11 p.m., which wasn't unusual, and on the weekends buses went till about 1 a.m., so I didn't have much to worry about. I got on the first bus to head to the SkyTrain station without anything out of the ordinary. Got on the SkyTrain, and still not much to bat an eye at other than, the usual drunk crowd. Now, when I reached the bus terminal after the second bus, there were only a few of us left on the bus, including the sketchy guy in the corner. But as I mentioned, it's late and on the weekend, so I just figured that he was just another guy going home. So everyone gets off of the bus, and I pick up my stuff and I get off. I was probably the last or close to the last person to get off. Around the whole bus loop, they have the stations for buses to pull up and have the departure times posted. So I'm heading over to check how long I would be waiting for, and this guy waves me over, sketchy guy from the bus, so I take out my headphones to see what he wants, and he proceeds to ask me if I wanted to have a smoke with him. I responded saying, "No thanks, I don't smoke." Well, then the guy proceeds to take a step towards me and stabs me twice. Completely random and out of nowhere. The guy ends up stabbing me in the heart and the liver. It was a really surreal feeling. I remember it feeling as if I got punched in the gut and got the wind knocked out of me. It took me a second to realize what happened as I'm hunched over trying to figure out what the hell just happened. I look down and I realize I'm bleeding, and not just a little bit. I was losing blood at what I assume was a pretty quick rate. I just ended up falling to my knees, and without much thought, I started yelling for help. Luckily for me, there were still some people at the loop waiting for their buses and rushed over to help me. I remember this one girl who I believe was coming from the local mountain from a ski trip or something like that, ended up coming down to the ground and tried to keep me calm. I guess one of the bystanders ended up calling 911, and from what I was told, the time from the call being made to the time I got to the hospital was within 20 minutes. The time for the whole event is just kind of jumbled in my head. Next thing I remember, the ambulance is there and they are loading me onto a gurney and into the ambulance. I guess the body's natural reaction is to curl up into a ball to keep vitals safe, but the paramedics kept having to tell me to lay flat so they could do their thing. But I remember that being one of the hardest things to do. I remember them asking me personal questions like my name and where I live, just basic things like that. And in my head, I knew the answers, but at the time, I just could not vocalize them. I asked the paramedics in there how bad it was and if I was going to make it. Of course, they didn't answer at the time, which frustrated me to no end, but looking back, it makes total sense. Just not to freak me out more than I already was. Last thing I remember of the night was being wheeled into the ER and grabbing onto someone's scrubs, and it all kind of went dark after that. I ended up having surgery on my kidney and heart, and I have a scar going from my collarbone to just below my belly button. I was put into an induced coma for a few days so my body could heal, and ended up spending another week or so in the hospital after waking up. From what I've been told, one of the top cardio surgeons in our province happened to be at the hospital and was able to push a less severe surgery back to come and do the surgery on me. If that other patient didn't agree to have their surgery postponed, or that surgeon didn't happen to be there that day, there's a good chance I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't say there was a particular moment that I accepted I was going to die, but when the paramedics wouldn't answer my question, I knew it wasn't a good sign. This all happened almost 7 years ago, and I have told my story many times to people I meet, and friends who have asked, and I can tell the story in about 5 minutes, basically have it scripted out in my head. However, this is the first time I've ever actually written about it, so sorry if this comes out as a huge wall of text, but I guess it was a different outlet for me, and just a story I haven't told like this before. Next story. I was in an abusive relationship when I was 19 and 20. My abuser tried to kill me a few times. The last time, he attempted to throw me down the stairs and I fought back, so he stomped on my face. It was my 20th birthday. He stomped on my face and arms and kicked my body. I don't know what made him stop, but I remember thinking, this is how I die. I remember thinking that and jolting back to reality, forcing myself to stay awake and not pass out. I remember running out of the house with my phone and laptop and wallet. I remember my uncle pulling up and taking me to the hospital. I survived with a broken orbital bone and some pretty bad trauma. There were days where he'd wave a gun in my face, but it wasn't as bad as that night. I don't know how I survived. I don't know how I got out. I don't know how I was brave enough to leave him, but I did. I turned 21 last week, and I survived, and I'm thriving. Next story. There's been twice. I don't know if either were planning to murder me, but I believe they wanted to at least hurt me. I dated a guy for a long time that was very emotionally unstable. When I left him, he didn't handle it well as expected. I woke up around 4 a.m. once, and he was crawling on top of me. He had found the spare key and let himself into my home. He kept kissing me and wouldn't get off of me. I still lived with my dad. I told him that if he didn't get off of me, I was going to start screaming. Then he got up. He stood in the doorway for a really long time and stared at me while breathing really, really heavily. He said he wasn't going to go away until I kissed him, and it had to be a good kiss. So I kissed him, and he left. It doesn't sound that scary when I type it out, but knowing him and how he was acting, it was terrifying. He didn't come out there with good intentions. Next was from my stalker. 3 years ago, I had a pretty serious cyber stalker that was making my life hell. He knew the right way to do things so he wouldn't receive any legal repercussions. I woke up in the middle of the night once and couldn't go back to sleep. I was playing on my phone and I kept hearing this faint knocking coming from the living room. I got up to go see what it was, and it was my stalker, slowly prying open one of the living room windows. He ran off and I called the police, but I couldn't prove that it was him. My son was only 6 months old back then. He's 3 now, and I'm still afraid to let him sleep in his own room because of that guy. If I didn't happen to be awake, he would have gotten in and have done God knows what. Next story. My brother 6 and I 9 were playing games in our computer room, which was at the back of our house, when our next door neighbor, 20-ish male, came over and said he needed us to go to his place for something. We sort of knew him. Our dad had hired him to do some work, so he wasn't a total stranger to us, so we went. Well, he took us into his bedroom, bound our hands, and tried to stuff socks in our mouths to gag us. He then pulled out a knife and tried to threaten us. We didn't understand the weight of the situation even then, because he asked me, "Do you know what this means?" And I joked, "You're going to cook something in the kitchen?" And then he grabbed me and pulled me onto the floor and tried to smother me. When he realized I was still getting some breaths in, he switched to strangling me. I remember kind of giving in and telling myself, "It's okay. Mom and Dad are going to give me a good funeral." And then I saw my brother standing at the door saying he was scared and he wanted to leave. I begged him to stay, and he did, which is something I will never forget, and has made such a hugely positive impact on our relationship. And at that point, it clicked in my mind that once I was dead, he was going to kill my brother too. So I started to fight the hardest I had ever fought. I bit and scratched and threw my body around and knocked a large stereo down that made enough noise for his parents to come in. They were home at the time. They untied us, took us home, and his dad dropped to his knees and begged my mom not to call the police. Obviously, she completely ignored his request and called. In the end, they found the carving knives, industrial plastic bags, and other equipment to dispose of our bodies in his room. To this day, that is the closest I have ever come to dying. Next story. I'm not sure if I can classify this as attempted murder, as I never saw the perpetrator again afterwards, but it sure as hell felt like it. My best friend at the time and I were 18. She was dating an older, emotionally abusive man. I was concerned that she was being physically abused as well, so I tried to spend as much time with them as I could to see if there was any evidence to support my theory. And he definitely knew I was onto him, as I had protested his emotional abuse and had witnessed it many times. He really didn't like me hanging around. So one night we were driving his truck, he was driving, and friend was in the passenger seat. I was in the middle of the bench seat, and we had just left and I realized there was no adult seat. To set the scene, they lived on a country road. So suddenly, this guy decides he wants to scare us. Starts driving faster and faster. Starts hitting about 160 kilometers an hour. We're begging him to stop. He's laughing maniacally. Then he turns off his headlights and takes his hand off of the wheel. It was probably only 60 seconds max, but it felt like an eternity. I've never been so scared in my life, and he just laughed the whole time. Once he started driving normally again, we were pissed, and his girlfriend and him were fighting. He never admitted any wrongdoing, and thank God my friend finally broke up with him, so I never had to see him again. It came out later that he was physically abusing her as well. So I just want to point something out that I learned in a previous video where somebody was in a car with somebody who was driving recklessly. And apparently if you say, "Stop the car, I'm going to vomit, I'm going to hurl, I'm going to throw up," apparently the person will stop the car because they don't want vomit in the whip. And then you can get out, call somebody, or just get away from that person. I've never been in a situation where I've had to test and use that advice, but it can't hurt to try because nobody wants vomit in their car, even crazy people. But anyway, next story. So, when I was in middle school, around 12 years old, I was a part of a youth group, think scout type thing, and we would have weekend trips and events and stuff that you'd typically assume groups like that did. When we would stay overnight on weekends at places, we would play this game called Tactical Advantage, which is basically just fill socks with flour. You split into 2 teams, go into the woods or field, and try to beat the crap out of the other team with the flour-filled sock. And we were 12, come on. So basically, team tag with socks. Then, one weekend, we were at an event, and at this particular event, there are us, the kids, and then the adults or staff. We all decide one night to play a game of tactical advantage and head to a nearby wooded area. My team stayed put while the other and some staff headed into the woods to set up their base or whatever. Me and my best friend at the time came up with a plan to haul ass past the other team's base and flank them. So the whistle sounds off and off we go. We move really quickly and go pretty damn far. Eventually, we hear voices nearby. Sounds like a group of guys. Great. We found the other team, I thought. Only I couldn't tell if they were the other team or the staff. Last thing I wanted to do was run out like a maniac and have it be a bunch of adults laughing their ass off at me. Luckily, it's like midnight and we're pretty well hidden, so I decide to shout out, "Are you players or staff?" Silence for a second, then followed by, "What the F did you say?" And my heart dropped, as if I was in a damn free fall. The people start screaming and yelling how they're gonna murder us, chop us up, SA our families, like the sickest crap I've heard. And I've heard some sick and twisted crap. Eventually, we can hear them stand up and move towards where they heard our voice, so me and my friend get up and sprint. The guys are still screaming crap at us and following us, so we eventually just drop in some brush. We can hear/see the silhouettes of two of them pretty close, 100 feet maybe. One's looking in brush going to the opposite direction. The other is looking in brush but coming up in our direction. I motion to my friend and he understands what I motioned for. I pick up a decent-sized rock and chuck that crap as far as I can. And when the two dudes take off, we book it back to where we were staying. It was a small private airport. Then we told the actual staff, who called the cops. The guys never got caught, but the cops said it was probably a meth lab. I still think about that crap every so often. I'm convinced that they would have murdered us if they had caught us. Next story. Then husband and I were arguing, sitting side by side on the couch. Suddenly, he grabbed me by the throat. I struggled to pry him off of me and fell off of the couch. He then straddled me and continued choking me. I tried to get leverage, but he was 80+ pounds heavier and 5 inches taller, and I couldn't get purchase. I remember blacking out and feeling, well, so this is it, I guess. Not quite peace, but not fear. Then I came to gagging and coughing. Apparently me passing out scared him, and he never apologized. The marks took ages to fade, and yes, I left him afterwards. Next story. I've talked about it before on Reddit, which is the only place I've talked about it. I had a psychotic family member that used to SA and torture me regularly. I had knives in my face and guns held up to my head too many times to count. He killed my pets in front of me and SA'd me with things that were far too big to be anywhere near a young kid. This ordeal started when I was 5. There was one particular instance that stood out though, and I had just accepted that I was going to die. I was minding my own business when he snuck up on me and forced me to go into the woods behind my grandmother's house. He had shot his gun, and he made me carry a small shovel, one of those shovels with the narrower blade, whatever it's called, and he put the gun up to my head and made me walk. I got to a spot pretty far out and he told me to start digging. He told me I was digging my own grave. He told me many times if I were ever to speak up about anything he did to me, he would kill me and my baby brother. He threatened to kill my mom and dad in front of me. He killed my pets to prove his point. I had to make up stories of why Peaches died, why Normal stopped coming home, why Patches disappeared, why Princess ran away. He claimed I was digging this grave because I spoke up about what he was doing. He said he was fed up with me and that I was worthless now. He wanted me to be gone. So he sat there, with the gun to my head while I continued to dig. After a while, I uncovered a Rubbermaid container. You could tell he was getting giddy when I found it. He told me to open it, and when I did, I found 2 of my missing kittens. They were partially liquefied. He laughed and laughed after I opened up this container. Then he left me there. I felt a slight sense of relief, but I felt more guilty than anything. That guilt is what still haunts me to this day, more so than the prospect of being murdered by this guy. He is still out there, by the way. The last time I bumped into him, when I was about 27 or so, he grabbed me and pulled me in, then whispered, "I still remember," into my ear. Does he remember murdering my pets? Or all of the things he did to me? Or does he remember his promise because I spoke up? I'm a really jumpy person, and every bump or loud noise makes me think that he has found me. Next story. Probably will get buried, but I'm fairly certain someone on a dark rural road was trying to pull me over and kill me. I was driving back from New Orleans to Mobile, Alabama around 10 p.m. Just empty roads for miles, pitch black. Then this car comes up behind me, passes me going really fast, no big deal though, but then the car starts to slow down. Okay, this guy's a crappy driver. I speed up to go around him, maybe he got a text or something, but when I try to pass him, he gets in front of me again and slows down even more. Then I try to pass on the other lane. Again, the car slows down even more and gets in front of me. I can't pass, and at this point we are both going like 10 miles per hour, 5 miles per hour. then dead effing stop, middle of the highway, pitch black. Long, straight stretch of road, no street lamps, nothing but effing swamp and river around us. Middle of F nowhere. The door starts to open. I wait a moment, then scream around the car, dipping in the grass on the side of the road, hoping I don't hit debris that gives me a flat tire or something. Then this effer closes the door and starts speeding after me. I check my phone, and this is back in like 2008, where I wasn't cool enough to have a kick-ass smartphone. I just had a typical flip phone with AT&T, and I had no bars. It was like a bad horror movie trope. This car manages to pass me again and starts slowing down again. The car got me to a dead effing stop about 3 times, and 3 times I managed to speed around. This cat and mouse crap went on for a good 25 to 30 minutes. Finally, though, we started to come up to some aspects of civilization. The road winded up, some streetlights appeared, an intersection crept up, and this guy dropped back, took an exit, and I didn't see him again. The car was black, the windows were tinted. I have never been more scared and freaked out in my life. I bought a gun after that. Got training, never leaves my effing side. All I could think was, if this guy manages to get out of that car, I have nothing to defend myself with. Next story. I am a survivor of kidnapping, assault, and SA. The first time I regained consciousness, I accepted that I was going to die because of the immense pain and fear. I begged for days on end to be killed. Eventually, my captors became fearful of the investigation, and I was released in public, unclothed and drugged. I spent the next few years in a heavily medicated blur, wishing I had been dead. My recovery has been mentally and emotionally brutal, and even 16 years later, I still suffer every single day. But I am finally so thankful to be alive. Next story. I never considered it attempted murder until I started reading other people's stories on here. Basically, my ex was a piece of human garbage who got hooked on heroin and basically became insanely violent. He would hit me and slap me around, but I thought I could handle it until one day when he almost killed me. He was mad because he couldn't get a fix and lashed out at me. He jumped on top of me and grabbed a pair of shoelaces and tied my hands to the headboard and sat on my chest with his hands around my neck, all while screaming he needed me to give him money. I passed out and I just figured that I had died, and I remember thinking that someone would have to tell my mom and my siblings, and it was a very numb moment. When I came to about 10 minutes later, he had ripped my shorts off and my panties off and had decided to finger me while I was passed out because he said, "You were in my bed with your private cell. What was I supposed to do?" When I got away, I just went home and I locked myself in my room. I was 18 at the time and still living at home. I never told anyone what he did, but he was arrested about a year later for SA of a minor, and then a few years after that, he was arrested for theft and for drug possession. I don't know what he's doing now. Next story. I had a roommate's girlfriend try to kill me once. She came into my room one night while I was very drunk and very depressed and tried to convince me I wanted to take my own life. When that didn't work, she pinned me down, put a box cutter in my hand, wrapped her hand around me, and dragged it down my arm. She did the same with my other arm and then ran out into the living room screaming that I had tried to take my own life. I lost all of my friends that night. They thought I was selfish for trying to take my own life. That night probably ended up saving my life though, as it was the first step in learning to get rid of toxic people. That is, I know all of these stories are crazy, but what a horrible person. Just evil. Here's a box cutter, never mind, I'll do it for you, and then snitching? And then they don't want to be your friend after that? I don't know, like OP said, it's a good thing, but what an insane group. I'm sure if we got more details, we would be giving 2 thumbs down to every individual in that posse. But anyway, next story. So I let an ex-boyfriend come to my house so we could talk. I was quite naive at the time. I was 22 and he was 35 and a former boxer. He accused me of cheating on him while we were broken up, and he hit me. It was being very scary. So I said, "Yes, I did cheat on you," just so he would stop. I don't know what my thought process was by saying that. But then he pushed me back by my throat against a wall and started choking and strangling me as I couldn't breathe and was about to pass out. I remember thinking to myself, wow, so this is how it happens. To other people, this is really how it happens. He did let go eventually, but I suppose that was kind of a murder attempt on my life. I never liked talking about that incident and never really told anyone. I just remember thinking, once again very naive, how it all seems like something that only happens in movies or TV, but it's really happening to me. Next story. I had an ex-girlfriend try to run me over with her car, and another stabbed me with a pair of scissors. Oh, and another one hit me in the face with a bottle of vodka. The real bad one, though, was the one who tried very hard to smash my skull in with an aluminum T-ball bat. Thankfully, she pulled that crap in front of my then second best friend, who was instantly promoted to best friend status when she first clotheslined, then choked out my psychotic ex-girlfriend. I have had numerous attempts on my life and well-being, and the story is always the same. I have crap taste in women.
Okay, so I don't usually do commentary back to back, but at least OP's self-aware here. How could I not comment on this story? So he's got a blind spot for a certain type of woman, and I don't know what it is. But at least he's not denying his bad taste in women, so I will give OP that, he or she. And also I will say, yes, I said aluminium on purpose like that. But anyway, next story.
So, I don't know what she was trying to do or when she would have stopped, but my mother-in-law snapped and jumped me one day. She called me to ask if I'd go get her prescription 20 minutes from my house and bring it to her 30 minutes back the other way. I was low on funds and had my nephew that we'd taken in to provide for, so I made sure she said she'd have the money to give back to me for the script and a few dollars in gas. When I got there, she was all crazy looking. Not unusual, but off enough for me to notice it was worse than normal, and I handed her the script and asked for the money. Well, she didn't answer and pushed past me to go to the car, where my baby nephew was sleeping. I came up behind her and asked what was wrong, and she said, "My grandson's not going anywhere with you, you little slut." And I said, "Whatever, Kathy, you obviously just don't have the money, and now you're trying to turn it around like I did something." This is after I had driven all over and delivered your meds to you, but fine. I had gotten into the front seat then and buckled up, but the car was running. I'd never turned it off. She then grabbed my ponytail from behind and started punching the back of my head. It took time to get the car in park and get out of the seatbelt, but when I did, we brawled. She's also a huge woman, very tall. I don't know if she clears 6 feet, but she's close, and maybe 280 pounds. I was 5'2" and 120. She got on top and tried to choke me, and I grabbed a fistful of hair, snatched her head down, and held it while I punched with the other. I think it was then that I broke my wrist, but I didn't know it then. Finally, my nephew's mom, Kathy's daughter, comes out and screams, and she finally gets off. But the whole time, it was like the lights were on, but no one was home in her eyes. She may very well have kept going if no one else had been around to snap her out of it. And while she, the cops, and everyone else would say I gave as good as I got the worst of it. And she attacked me. She got up and went in the house, and I went to the car and tried to get the baby. When I went to undo the straps, I realized my wrist was injured. Someone had called the cops. I won't get into all of that, but I ended up having to have surgery for pins and screws in my wrist, and it still hurts regularly. I haven't laid eyes on her since court, and I never will again. My husband was humiliated and just devastated. Every time I cried, he cried harder. His stepmom told me that before his grandmother, she told her that when my husband was a baby, she walked in on Kathy trying to smother him. That B word is certified crazy and should be locked the hell up. Next story. When I was about 12, I was swimming in a lake at our college. Another family was renting the cottage next to ours for the summer. A younger but bigger girl was part of that family. She joined me in swimming and kept pushing me under the water. At first I thought she was just messing around, but she started holding me under for longer and longer, even though between gasping, watery coughs, I was begging for her to stop. I remember feeling helpless and like there was nothing I could do. She was stronger than me and I couldn't get away. My throat and eyes and nose were stinging. It was horrible, but for whatever reason, she stopped and I swam/ran to shore, crying the whole way, hoping I was faster than her and never looking back to see if she was gaining on me. When I told my mom what happened, she assured me the younger girl was just trying to play. No one ever legitimized how terrifying that experience was. Next story. West Philly. I had just wrapped up a film production that evening. I didn't feel like staying at the after party, and it was nice and perfectly cool outside, so I left. As I was walking home, this kid from across the street starts heckling me. Trashy young white dude with the equally trashy South Jersey chick, you can always tell. Obsessed with taking my glasses. He approaches barely saying anything and just starts wailing on me and smashes my glasses. At this point, my nose is most definitely broken, and a flood of blood is pouring out. Somehow, he gets me on the ground and grabs me from the back by the neck. His girlfriend's screaming to stop. I can't breathe, and then he's got his mouth next to my ear, and he keeps repeating, "Tell me what it feels like to die. Tell me what it feels like to die." And I mutter something incomprehensible, and he pushes my face in the sidewalk, and he eventually lets go. I'm then catching my breath, and when I get my bearings, they're both gone. Someone must have called the cops since the girl was screaming like a madwoman, and they pull up. I'm bleeding from my face too, and they just look at me and don't say anything. I'm hysterical, and they must think I'm crazy, and they drive off. I go back to the party and I get cleaned up. I still think about it every day, and that was over 10 years ago. Next story. This crap, oh man, it could be in a bad comedy movie. My friend, let's call her Karen, asks me not to ask questions. She asked me to give her a ride to the crappy part of town. wait in the car for 20 minutes, and if her and her sister, let's call her KS for Karen's sister, aren't back by then, drive away and come back with the police. Well, 30 minutes later, and Karen and KS haven't returned, and I refused to leave them behind. So I did what a dumb 20-something-year-old idiot would do. I hid my keys and went on to rescue my bestie. Now, I knew KS had a drug problem, and I figured, well, I guess I'll probably have to give somebody a BJ, but it's better than letting Karen and KS die, so I went after them. Then a very polite guy told me where they were. Karen was crying, and KS had a black eye and a bloody nose. Things were not looking good. This guy then puts a gun to my forehead and asks me if anyone else is coming, and tells me he'll shoot anyone else who says Karen or KS's name. I started to apologize and ask what I can do to pay for his inconvenience and how do I take my friends home. He then seemed less pissed and asked for my name, which I say, oh, it's OP, but my friends always call me a childhood nickname, and he asked me where I went to school, and I tell him a popular school of delinquents. And then this guy brightens up, he puts his gun away, and started to laugh. Oh, we went to school together, remember me? And we had studied together. For a whole year, almost every day until I transferred to a less crappy school. He laughed a bit and we chit-chatted, all pretending he wasn't just about to kill all of us. He let me, Karen, and KS go for old time's sake, but if he ever saw any of us around his area again, we would wish he had just killed us all that day. All while smiling. I counted my effing blessings, grabbed my friends, and got the F out of there.